Hand over for further introduction. Just for your context, the organization ACRA I work with Leslie, who's also in the room. ACRA stands for the African Community Resource Rights Alliance. We're based in South Africa, in Cape Town, and we're an NPO working with Indigenous communities across the sub-region of Southern Africa to advocate for their biocultural rights, and specifically their rights to use and manage and benefit from their natural resources in their lands. And so we have worked quite closely with IPNESA over the last few years. We're sort of sister organizations. We've been working alongside each other since our inception. And so IPNESA's delegation is joining us here today. I think I can hand over to you two, our speakers, to introduce yourselves. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Kikabile Mohodu. I am the Secretary General of Indigenous Peoples Network of Southern Africa, IPNESA. I come from Botswana. I'm a lawyer by profession. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Dalita, for having us. My name is Nicodemus Cooper. I come from Botswana. Come from an indigenous community called Namaquin. This community is not only seen in Botswana, it's also seen in South Africa and Namibia. That is why we recognize ourselves as indigenous to Southern Africa, the three countries combined, and possibly other countries that we haven't really mapped if our people are there. So I also serve as the board member, part of the executive committee of IPNESA, or Indigenous Peoples Network of Southern Africa, that Dalita has just mentioned. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you. I think then we can just get into the meat of the discussion. And I think that's primarily around if you could tell us a little bit more about the situation in Botswana, specifically under the new administration, the UDC. If you could share a bit about what the situation was beforehand, what has changed, and maybe what that looks like for the indigenous peoples. What are you hearing from the communities, and any other personal reflections that you'd have to share? So I think I can give over to you, Nicodemus, first.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. What a moment. Sometimes as activists, you don't know where to start. With reference to how it has been before the immediate past elections of 2024, general elections. We've really gone through a lot. We've struggled a lot as activists. We were even intimidated, and we couldn't be able to express our issues and those of our communities freely. That is one part. The second part is we were even more or under-resourced to even make sure that our community organizations or advocacy groups remain relevant and, bring up the issues, not only at local level, national level, and globally. There were limitations because of the atmosphere that we had then. But with the new government, it's more like a new breath of life, where all we ever needed as community, or as indigenous peoples, is to be recognized. That is the first thing. Recognition means a lot to any person, not only indigenous peoples, but once you are recognized, then you know you are part of that community. And then everything else falls into places after recognition. So when the new government publicly pronounced that indeed there are indigenous people in Botswana, that was more like homecoming. It was more like, now that's when you feel that we are indeed part of this country. We are part of this region. And we are watching everything closely. We are not only bystanders and watching, we are doing interventions, diplomatically, because given the situation, you don't need to be seen as hostile, but being part of the solution and part of that intervention that really gets to see where the gaps are at policy level, so that through legal frameworks, we are recognized not only through public pronouncement. I think I can share that much for now.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Mohodu. You could just add any other reflections that you have on the moment on the ground today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Talita. I think for us as human rights defenders and activists in Botswana, it was quite a moment of watershed that was ushered in by the new government. You know, when the new government took power in November, and they decided to bury Mr. Pitse, who stayed in the mortuary for 3 years without being given the honor to be buried, because the previous regime said he was not indigenous to CKGR, and he was not part of those people who were staying in the Kalahari, Central Kalahari Game Reserve. For us, his burial began to unlock the rights of the indigenous people in Botswana. And it was also crucial to witness that the Human Rights Day was commemorated within the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. That was also a blessing to the indigenous communities that showed indeed the current government is indeed trying by all means to give back the voice of the indigenous people. When the new government called us to sit down and wanted to know what is it that we want as indigenous people, for us we ululated, because that is what we always wanted to do, to be heard, to participate in the economy of the country known as Botswana, to be part of the citizenry of Botswana. So for us, it shows that the government of Botswana is committed to see to it that we become part and parcel of the citizen of Botswana, and therefore our rights also are taken into cognizance. Because that is always what we wanted with the previous government. We want to sit down with them. Because what we are saying is that we want to be given the rights similar to the ones that Botswana citizens get. We want to be given the same development that the other citizens get. We are not asking for something that is a pie in the sky. We are asked to be treated as human beings in the country that we believe is also ours. Currently, if you look at the developmental model of the country of Botswana, they only develop those who are recognized by the Constitution of Botswana. But we believe that with the coming of the new government, we will see some developments in the San communities, the indigenous communities. And when the government came out, the Botswana Community Transformation Program, that was to speak into the issues that we're concerned about, we saw also that as a positive step for us as indigenous people. And when we had a meeting also with the government, now just to expand on what we want as indigenous people, we sincerely believe that the government of Botswana is taking the rights of indigenous people of Botswana seriously. And we would like to confirm and reaffirm our commitment to assisting the government of Botswana realize its vision of developing the people of Botswana, including the indigenous people of Botswana. I thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much. I think it was really helpful for you to also set out those tangible examples of what the state has already done to show their shift in their approach to indigenous people, like the burial of Mr. Pitseng, like you mentioned. And I think, Nicodemus, your point on recognition is super important within the context of Southern Africa, where most of the states are still denying the recognition of indigenous peoples as such, with distinct cultures, and in terms of the human rights framework of indigenous peoples within Africa. I think both of you have mentioned that it's still relatively early on in the administration's term, and so you're still sort of monitoring the situation and seeing what the outcomes will be. But the state has expressed some commitments towards indigenous peoples so far. I'm wondering if you could share maybe some highlights of what those commitments have been and which were the most important for the indigenous communities. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Talita. We believe that the introduction of the Indigenous program, known as Kwena, within the government is very crucial to Indigenous development within Botswana. And we believe that that is one of the commitments that we see that the government is taking upon itself to do. When the Special Rapporteur on Indigenous rights came to Botswana and made some inroads into the country, we were very much happy when in the first time in the history of the country, the sitting president was able to say, we have indigenous people in Botswana. And these indigenous people are the Nama and the San people. Because all along, the government of Botswana had been saying, all of us in Botswana are indigenous. And they used to come up with programs known as remote area development programs, which does not necessarily speak to the issues bedeviling the indigenous people. But to see a city president saying, we have indigenous people in Botswana, and we are coming up with indigenous people's policy, and we are going to put together programs in the country that will ensure that the welfare of the indigenous people are taken into consideration. For us, that was welcome. And the fact that the government of Botswana interact with the indigenous people, sit down with them and ask them what would they want to do. But we still believe, I hope I'm not jumping the gun, we still believe that a legal framework need to be put in place in order to recognize indigenous people, because we've got lots of laws in the country. To start with, the Constitution of Botswana does not recognize indigenous people in Botswana. It does not recognize us as indigenous people. We've got other legal frameworks that do not recognize us as indigenous people. So we believe that the review, total overhauling of the Constitution will usher in a new era of recognizing us as indigenous people within the Constitution, and also trying to come up with some policies that will recognize us as indigenous people. So that's how I believe that this should be enshrined within the legal framework. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. Nicodemus, over to you.
Yes, it's always difficult to comment after the legendary advocate. Almost leaving nothing for me to say. Yeah, but a lot has really happened, and we are, like I said earlier, we are watching closely, and we are not only bystanders, but we've decided to be part of the solution because we know how it means to be recognized and what is it that we can contribute as indigenous people towards the emancipation of not only indigenous people, but Botswana generally as a global community. But what also stands out is, remember I mentioned recognition. After recognition, what comes is participation. Be allowed to participate in all processes so that our tone is seen in its elements, that indeed there is inclusivity of indigenous people. And participation in this context, I mean that we were also invited to the program that Comrade Mohodu just said, the Botswana Economic Transformation Program. That was intentional, that the indigenous peoples are expected to be part of this program so that they form it in the best way they believe it will serve them at grassroots level. Because previously, government will formulate programs for those indigenous so-called marginalized communities, whereas they were not part of that process. So that was a defining moment for us who also participated to actually give direction. And you could see the impact that the minority indigenous peoples that were in that room actually made a huge difference. And the government officials were very appreciative of that, and even acknowledging themselves that indeed they haven't been doing certain things very well. What also I think made a huge impact, as Comrade SG has said, is the visit of the Special Rapporteur, Dr. Barume. For my community, the Nama community, it was the first time in the history of Botswana that the Nama community ever engaged or interacted with a special rapporteur. What we've ever done is to read about the reports that special rapporteurs have visited other communities, but never the Nama community. And really post that, we saw a lot of inquiries that, from different quarters, from the media, general community members, now as if they only started to know about the Nama community. What also really stood out for me is during the dialogue conference that the first ever Nama and Sen dialogue that happened in Khanzi early March. In its finalization, it came up with a declaration to really give the tone and the direction to government that how we want to be recognized as indigenous people. We know we are Sen groups. We know we are Kwe groups. But we do have distinctive identities. For instance, like I'm a Nama, I want to be recognized as a Nama. Within the San communities, if I'm a Naro or I'm from the Bukakwe or I'm from the Klanikwe, I need to be mentioned with that specific identity, not bracketed or grouped. So that declaration, we hope it will give direction to government and eventually to policies. It goes further. For that, in that dialogue, we had the Minister of Correctional Services, or Justice and Correctional Services, and that's a very strategic ministry to work with because it speaks of legal frameworks. Once you are recognized, then the legal frameworks need to be in place, specific to that recognition. And the minister, who was the keynote speaker at the time, then made a public pronouncement that the Botswana government has started the process of ratifying ILO 169. You should have seen how the activists in that room reacted. The government has only started doing that. It hasn't ratified, but we were celebrating as it has really been ratified. So that goes to show how really we have been in the trenches and advocating for such developments. And of course, he further mentioned about the government's intention to implement the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. So that's huge steps and commitments that the government of Botswana has really set themselves for, and the world is watching.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, that's really profound, and I thank you for mentioning the process of ratifying ILO 169, because I believe that would make Botswana, if that's concluded, the second country in Africa to have ratified that, ratified ILO 169. And I think also maybe that leads quite naturally into the last sort of discussion point, which was really around what are the priorities of the indigenous peoples in Botswana. Maybe it can be directly from the declaration, Mr. Kwepa, that you've referenced, or if either of you can start off, or if it can just be from your perspectives as indigenous peoples. What do you want to see the Botswana government engaging in and doing, working alongside the indigenous communities? I know you've already started mentioning the priorities around recognition, which is underway, participation. If there's anything else specifically that you'd want to see from your state.
Yeah, thank you so much, Talita. I think for us, like you rightly put it, we start with recognition. Because you can only give us certain kinds of development if you recognize us. And the second thing would be recognize us legally within the existing legal framework. Laws that are there should recognize us. Currently, the indigenous people are regarded only as Botswana, being taken over from a certain grouping of the Bantu people. And that means our language in Botswana is Setswana, not our indigenous languages. So for us to start with, there should be a legal recognition. Policies emanating from that legal recognition or legal framework should come up. And then secondly, you find that in most cases, communities of indigenous people are not developed. We don't have telecommunications, we don't have tarred roads, we don't have clinics or health systems. That's what we need as a people. It's not about meeting with us and talking and saying that this is what we are going to do. It should be tangible. We should see roads. We should see schools. We should see clinics in indigenous communities. For us, that will be what really we want. We need to see schools in indigenous communities. Currently, you'll find that the government of Botswana, or would say the previous government, had the hostel system, whereby children as early as 6 years are taken away from their mothers and fathers to go 200 miles to school there. We want schools in our communities. We want clinics in our communities. We want hospitals in our communities. We want roads to go to our communities. We don't want to be called people who are far away from developments. Who is coming with this development? It's the government. Now, if you don't develop us and tell us that we are staying far away from developments, we are not staying far away from developments. We want developments to be built in our own communities. We don't want a situation where we are relocated to go to developments. We want developments to come to us. So this is why we are saying we are watching the new government, that we want the government to build schools, to have those tangible developments in our communities. And that is what we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think I need to address the positive development that the government has taken so far. Because remember, this is a new government. It has its manifesto, which obviously didn't have the legal frameworks that would really support all the beautiful initiatives or projects that they intend to implement. So the priority area right now is really to have the legal frameworks that align and how they will deliver on those projects. But there is a sign of that positive direction in having a dedicated program that is called the Kwena Empowerment Program, that is dedicated specifically for indigenous peoples, and in this case, the Nama and the San. The intention is that it has already started. The president last year, November, mentioned it in the State of the Nation address. And early this year in February, the Minister of Finance mentioned it in his budget speech, that in fact it is a project that needs to be implemented this financial year. So what that means is they have identified at least 50 indigenous members who are going to participate in this program. And 6 of those indigenous peoples will sit in the interministerial committee as the national representatives from the indigenous communities. So that's impact. That's big. That's something that we've never had before. And the 44 will be the ambassadors who will be in each district where indigenous person is seen, so that this group of 50 indigenous peoples should this financial year come up with a model that will really serve them better. So that model will only happen after these 50 people have been trained, and they are about to be trained. And once they have finished their training on sustainable life approach, then they will start with consultations in all indigenous-based communities, so that a model, like I said, is developed towards their economic emancipation. So that's a very intentional and good approach that you see already, that there are signs that this government has good intentions and they can only move one step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, both of you, for sharing those reflections and that balance between, again, the Indigenous priorities and also the positive developments that have already been underway by the new state administration. I think at this stage we can open up to the floor for any questions from the room, anything that you want to hear a bit more from the speakers on stage about the context that they've shared so far.
Thank you very much for the question. Just to our Botswana compatriots, is it possible to share some of your Indigenous tongue? We would like to hear your Indigenous language all the way in New York. Can you carry some of your songs or just poem or anything you would like to share in your language? Will be much appreciated. Thank you for the reflections.
Yes, over to you, Mr. Mokhodu, Nicodemus.
Do you have a mic there?
Oops, okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now that means now nervousness is striking in. Yeah. Thank you. The good thing about me is that I was never given the ability to sing. Neither I was given the ability to do a poem, but at least I speak my native language. So I'll just say, Kaise dagira gan nen sadagoma sida nitsi hu pai haba sen ngoab khara khwa huyao sida ge tikwen ga in ma mabanka ha khabesina ngaban ha iara ne taran khwa komira ka disin in di kobabko an on si ne naungams didarami kaupe neba United States of America zakukon o didage mika. So what I'm basically saying is thank you very much for this opportunity that I was able to, from this building, be able to speak my native language, and my people, wherever they are situated, are able to listen and relate to this language. Thank you.
I think you represented me because I neither sing nor dance. Mehala tika damsa titu insequita. Ngoate hana United States of America. Tuko tika damsa kuingoa. I think briefly I was just saying that I grew up in the city and I don't speak well my language. I know it, but I'm here in the United States and I'm willing to speak my language. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions?
Oh, I was just going to represent and speak on this behalf.
Oh, okay.
Please take.
Let me stand here. Thank you very much. Tiktoni sanguye, tikwedam kuya kono, tikianka tini yoka kuya tikwedam sika. No aya katina tamati toni sa kianka kumbamba gat. So I was basically saying that I'm happy to be here, to be speaking my language here in New York, and I'm greeting everyone back at home.
Thank you.
Do dam sagoke.
Hebe, kwedambe.
Kwedam. Do kwedam.
Kwedam te kuyakwe.
Really? Mangwa sagoke.
Botswana ke sa kare kwena kuyakwe.
Oh, shaka rice kadam sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, he's from Blandford Thames, so I was speaking the language, our language in Botswana. The Shaikarawe language is around 400 kilometers from Mababi, where I come from, but the languages, like we're speaking in the morning, the Kwe languages do connect because they come from the same root. That's why I was able to pick what is say it's a buka kwe, but the fact that it has this kwe in it means that any language that has a kwe in it, like the Kani kwe, like the Ghana kwe, we can be able hear each other. Tsatsawe kutakumre.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jean Marie, for that. I think if there's no other questions, any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing. All right. So then with that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much, Mr. Mogodu, Mr. Kwepa, for your invaluable perspectives and the reflections that you've shared. I think if you could maybe wrap us up with some last words, the last thing that you wanted to leave us with here in the room and online, and then we can close the event. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was itching for those last words. Yeah, I just want to commend our government and also speak to African governments, more especially governments that we have indigenous people and hunter-gatherers, that if you take indigenous people on board, actually they are the ones who are going to do your bidding. As we can see, we are here speaking for the government of Botswana for the first time, because what the government of Botswana is doing is that thing that we always wanted. We also want to thank the international community that have always rallied behind indigenous people, more especially in Botswana, being able to support us, bring us to international forums like IMRIP, like the Permanent Forum, where we were able to speak. But lastly, would like the international community to support this program of Kwena Empowerment Program in Botswana with funding. I believe we really need that in order to take the indigenous people of Botswana into their destiny, because the government of Botswana is willing, has come up with this program. But as we know what has been happening during COVID and all that, there is limited funding for that. And we believe that the international community will be able to assist us as indigenous people of Botswana on that. I thank you.
Mine is to briefly thank supporters or partners of IPNESA, with special thanks to Accra and JAMA International for really make it possible for us to attend international platforms like this and be able to bring awareness globally. Our appreciation further goes to Cultural Survival, who has become our home, a safe space for us to really share our thoughts with everyone. By the way, I'm an Indigenous Journalism Fellow from Cultural Survival. I just finished my 10 months last month, and Cultural Survival has also helped my community with establishing a NAMA online radio in Lokwave. So thank you very much for the support.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kwepa, Mr. Mogodu. I think we've all really learned a lot about the context in Botswana, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the indigenous leadership and what unfolds. The state hopefully committing and following through on their commitments. And thank you again so much for your time. Thank you for attending, and thank you to everyone in the room. Thanks. Bye.